in the combine week, and we've always had a pleasure talking to you about the combine and the upcoming draft and how they relate actually. But you've had such a wonderful career representing, in particular, football players. I know you've had a lot of different athletes, but football in particular. And we have been over the last couple weeks, even maybe Super Bowl week, we've been talking about where the combine is and where it's going because it seems like with all of this NIL stuff, you see a lot of these athletes now, Lee, kind of trying to call their shots like, hey, I am who I am now and I'm worth this, as opposed to back in the day where you just played and you hoped that you were, getting you signed by an NFL team and that was it. But now, some of these players, they don't even want to go to the combine. Some of these guys don't even want to go to pro day now. And how does this affect the combine? Are we going to be looking at the combine now, maybe not this year, but maybe in the future where, the first rounders, these top quarterbacks, won't even show up? The combine will be for more of the guys in the second to sixth round.
So there have always been players who didn't go to the combine. Remember that at Pro Scouting Day, they do the exact same procedure as they do at the combine. They weigh and measure the players, they test them for all sorts of things, they give them physicals, they have testables, how fast you can run a 40, how many times you can bench press 225 pounds, a vertical leap, a broad jump, and a three-cone drill. And then they have players working out at their different positions. But there have always been quarterbacks who didn't throw at the combine because the seminal event for a top quarterback is the throwing session back at their universities in March. And it's 60 to 80 throws scripted with someone working with the quarterback, and then they try to show every basic throw. And the conceit is the ball never touches the ground if they've done it right with the receivers. And if they do that, it's a thing of beauty and oohs and ahs. But some players realize that you have someone like Caleb Williams in this year's draft who really only needs to attract two or three teams because he's going at the top of the draft. And then it'll be, does Chicago replace their current quarterback with Williams, or do they use it to package up a mega trade that allows them to get a group of players? So Chicago really has the power. But I think the combine continues because every single person in pro football involved in personnel is there. You've got owners, every general manager, every executive, every head coach, every assistant coach, every scout are all in one place. So if you dramatically perform, and the biggest trigger is the 40, if you dramatically perform, a wide receiver, a running back, a defensive back who runs a fast 40 vaults up into the draft, which is testables. And so I don't think anything really replaces that. And the players have enough insecurity, except for the few cases you mentioned, that they're not going to risk having everyone else go by them with non-attendance at the combine.
I mean, they could do essentially they could do some damage, right, to their own self if they don't perform well. So maybe is that one of the reasons too?
So it's competitive, and
Yeah.
people are putting together their draft boards with all the players rated by number and position, and so you may strategically figure that you can run a faster 40 back at your university, or you can do something better. But nothing has a more dramatic effect than blowing out the combine with a fast 40, or
Yeah.
blowing it out with a vertical leap where you jump out of the gym.
Yeah.
Now, that I will tell you, with all this elaborate scouting, 40% of the players picked in the first round, history shows, will underperform or not be with their teams in 5 years. So it's not an exact process because you can't test heart and you can't test. Football is now coming down to, in many games, the fourth quarter, and in a lot of games, the last drive. So the question is, what does a player do in adversity? That quarterback's throwing a couple interceptions, the crowd is booing, the game's getting out of hand. What does he do now?
Yeah.
So you're looking for players who can compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, and elevate their level of play in those critical situations. And that is more seen on film, and it's more seen in the one-on-one interactions than just the ability to throw the ball.
Now, that said, with the interview portion where the players sit down with the coaching staffs, are are they able to get that feeling? I mean, you take a Troy Aikman who all you had to do is talk to him for 3 minutes and you knew he had that brain and he had that heart. Where in an interview situation, kind of like any job interview, can they fake them out, or how does the team differentiate with those?
So that 15-minute interview at the combine will be one point of contact. For some players, they'll play in all-star games, so they're pro coaches for both teams. So, for example, Philip Rivers uh, was coached by the Chargers in the Senior Bowl, and they fell in love with him, and that was that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and but this is just the tip of the iceberg. They're going to continue to have meetings where they come back to campus, sit in front of a chalkboard, uh, be able to see how the player reads plays or remembers plays. They're going to talk with coaches from college about what the players really like. They're going to do extensive amount of research, and the pro scouting day itself is I mean, there are two theories. One is the best way to predict future performance is past performance, so that's film. And the other is that you're drafting someone, projecting them into the future. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got to be able to figure out a way to say, okay, over the next 10 years, who and what does this player become in terms of it? So they're doing extensive stuff. I mean, they have interviews where they ask the player, are you a cat or are you a dog? They have, honestly, they have interviews where they say, uh, are you red
That's too
or are you
good.
blue? Those
Wow,
are the questions.
that's
They've
crazy.
all got their own. Cincinnati Bengals do a cold rush where they would just sit there and do nothing and make the player sort of figure out how to make contact. So they all have different philosophies.
Here we are. We're talking football still. The Super Bowl ended a while, a couple weeks ago, and we're still talking football. I feel like it never ends, which shows you with that 130 million viewership. Um, it's pretty impressive of where the NFL is today and how it just seems like you got the combine, you got the draft, and before you know it, it'll be preseason, and it's just pretty impressive. I want to
They,
ask you. Go ahead.
but to your point, they have carefully calculated this.
Yeah.
And the point is, the longest off season of any sport is football because they don't play, most teams don't play from roughly the end of December to the next August.
Yeah.
It's a long
Yeah.
off season. So you're going to have declarations of franchise players, you're going to have transition players. They've got all this spread out, and then March 16th you go to free agency, and then next you have the combine. Now
Hmm.
you each of these events spreads out, so it's football all year.
Yeah.
And I mean, we um, I threw my 37th consecutive Super Bowl party in Las Vegas, and we had 4,000 people. And
Oh,
we did a competition on esports where Michigan played Michigan State. We did a poker tournament with Jamie Gold and Phil Hellmuth there. We did a concussion conference where we studied brain health and had neurologists there to try to protect uh, players, prevention, awareness, and cure. We did humanitarian awards. So the Super Bowl itself, larger than other, oh my God, we were in Las Vegas and it was only 10 years ago that there was an impregnable wall between gambling
Hmm.
and the sport. And now we're sitting with three teams in Las Vegas and we're having a Super Bowl in Las that was never going to happen, but the gambling has inserted itself quickly. Now you can go into the Washington Commanders Stadium and while you're buying your hot dog, you can place a bet.
Wow. I want to ask you.
hey,
I want to ask you a couple of things, and we'll let you go. But we briefly, you and I spoke about the NIL deals last time we discussed that and had you on. And this year, in the last, I would say, in the last 5 6 weeks, you were hearing things in the background from like even possible, top 5 6 rounders for the draft coming up, like Harrison Jr. and a couple of even I think Caleb Williams even threatened that he may consider not even going in the draft this year. I mean, there was a lot of players who are getting a ton of money in college playing that they're thinking maybe I shouldn't go into the NFL yet. I'm getting paid too much money in playing in college. How is this? I mean, I talked to my friends. You, I'm sure, have really analyzed this, Leigh, but like, I still go back and forth. I don't know. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I mean, the idea that Shedeur Sanders shows up in a Rolls Royce is just a little. It's I don't know. It's a little tasteless for me. But what's your opinion on everything?
Well, first of all, understand that the old system wasn't perfect. There were always alums and agents giving money to players. So
Okay.
it wasn't visible. They wouldn't drive a Rolls Royce to campus. But the old system was there, and the players felt resentful. And it wouldn't have taken very much money for the NCAA to kept this all under control. In other words, if a player on scholarship got 5,000 extra dollars and could get a better apartment or get a nicer car to drive, they'd have been happy. But instead, the NCAA held on too tight. And then in California, you had SB 206, which said California athletes can hire a marketing director for name, image, and likeness. And it was on because every other top program, and now it's changed everything in college sports. We're devolving to a two-tiered system with about four conferences that have collectives with alums who give enough money to use in recruiting.
Yeah.
So the point is, money becomes recruiting. Or when I heard Nick Saban a couple of years ago talk about that Bryce Young had gotten $1 million in money, what was he doing? He was recruiting a traditionalist coach who would have kept all the pressure off a young quarterback like Bryce Young was now bragging about how much money he's being paid. So this changes everything because the age gets younger and younger. So you have 16 and 17-year-old high school players branding themselves, having a presence on social media, and signing NIL deals. So that cow came out of the barn or horse or somehow. And it's not going back in. But this is just going to evolve. There, in my view, will not be an NCAA with jurisdiction over these top five conferences. They'll do their own TV negotiations. They'll do their own rule setting, and everything that we've seen is in huge flux. And you throw in gambling as as an insert to sports. It's between conference realignment, NIL, gambling, everything else. It's a brave new world.
Yeah. It's pretty
And what
interesting.
and the NC2A who completely blew out SMU so many years ago, now that's standard operating procedure.
Exactly. And so
Hmm.
your schools, USC and Michigan and Ohio State and Auburn and Alabama and Georgia and schools like that
Yeah.
are going to be at such a elevated level that they will garner all the best talent.
As
Wow.
always, we really appreciate you joining us and just kind of shedding more light and insight on everything here. Continued success. We love you. We look forward to having you on again soon. Thanks again, Leigh.
Love to do it. So long.
There you
Thanks
go.
so much, Leigh. Have a great day.
You're welcome.
More to come live from North Dallas right here on Living the Good Life, everyone. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.